Welcome, everyone, to the Coin Bureau podcast. This is my very good friend,
Mad Mike Mooch.
And my name is Guy. And today, we're going to take a look, Mike, at just the current state of the crypto market.
What a go on in.
What a go on in. Yeah, exactly. It's been a pretty interesting last few weeks. There's been a lot going on. Crypto prices have been, they've been going up recently. They've taken a bit of a
slowly
downturn
but
today.
steadily.
Slowly but steadily, yeah. We've seen Bitcoin reach some levels that it had sort of fallen quite a long way past. So it's it breached 24K the other day, which in the grand scheme of things is not much for Bitcoin. But certainly under current conditions, that was a rally that
was that when there was an interest rate hike, or was it?
Yeah. So this rally was driven by a number of factors, really. And the weird thing is that in some cases they're factors that sort of you could reasonably expect them to actually tank the market, and instead it pumped it, which is quite strange. And I think that's one of the reasons why I thought this would be an interesting episode to do, because there's a lot going on at the moment, as I said, but it's so difficult to interpret this data that we have coming through, to interpret everything that's going on.
And there's no real historical sort of
precedent.
Yeah, further than 10 years.
Yeah, and obviously all of this is completely unique for crypto, but it's also very unprecedented circumstances as well for the sort of wider economy. And we're going to dig into exactly why that is in just a moment or so. But I thought it might be useful for people listening, and this is in kind of general economic terms as well. I guess it's not entirely relevant just to crypto, but I think for anyone listening who's into crypto, and especially those people who are new to crypto and sort of trying to make sense of the space, I think this could be a useful episode just to explore some of the things that are going on in the wider economy and try and make some sense of them. Try and understand why crypto prices have been going up recently, what the sort of longer term outlook could be. And of course, we're not trying to predict the future here, because predicting the future is impossible. But I think it would be useful information for people to have and to consider when making possible investment decisions. And of course, none of what follows
is financial advice. I was going to say, what we're telling you could be really useful for you to make some investment decisions. But remember,
it's not financial advice.
No.
Okay, exactly. I think the first thing to iterate before we go any further is we are still very much in a bear market. People tend to get... Thank you. That's the bear market sound. Yeah. People tend to get very excited when prices in crypto tick up, and I constantly getting questions. It's like, are we
done?
Are we done? Yeah.
Are we there yet?
Is this bear market? Yeah. Are we there yet? Is this bear market over? Can we all just go back to when prices were going up and everything was rosy? And the answer is no. So we are still very much in a bear market, and I expect us to remain in this bear market till at very least
tomorrow.
The end of this year, till at very least this afternoon.
Yeah.
And quite possibly on into 2024 as well. And 2024.
Oh.
I expect them to. I do expect these conditions to sort of prevail throughout next year as well.
Oh, okay.
So I could be wrong. It's, as I say, it's impossible to predict the future.
But you are our oracle.
But I am in the absence of anything better. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about two of the things that are really kind of driving markets at the moment. And this goes for crypto and kind of every other market as well, really. And the first one is Fed policy, the policy of the Federal Reserve over in the good old US of A. And I'm going to reference a lot of what is happening in the US economy during this episode, not exclusively what's happening in the States, because there's lots of other relevant stuff happening in other economies as well. But I use kind of US data because an enormous proportion of investors, especially crypto investors, are obviously based in the United States. The US is the biggest global economy. And kind of what happens in the United States tends to have, repercussions across the world. So it's all very, what happens in the US economy is relevant to sort of almost every other economy. So that's why I'm using a lot of US data, but not exclusively. Okay, so the policy of the Federal Reserve recently. Now, the Federal Reserve, as you may know, has a dual mandate. It has basically two jobs. Its first job is to ensure high employment, and its second job is to ensure sort of low interest. Well, basically to keep inflation under control. And the way that it keeps the best tool it has to keep inflation under control is the raising and lowering of interest rates. Yeah. So last week, on the 27th, the Fed board met again and approved another 0.75% rise in interest rates, 75 basis points, which is a fairly big hike in the grand scheme of things. But crucially, it was very much what investors were expecting. We were all sort of watching the markets, in the weeks leading up, and the broad consensus was that the Fed would only raise by 75 basis points. Some people were saying they could go a full 1%, a full 100 basis points, but this would have been a largely unexpected move, and that probably would have tanked the markets, certainly in the short term. However, it was just that 75 basis point raise that was in line with expectations, and the markets kind of reacted very favourably to that. So that was one reason why we saw that pump in prices last week. Because, as I've said many times before, markets love certainty more than anything else. Yeah. Markets don't like to be surprised.
Like old women.
Yeah. Markets are essentially like old women. Are essentially like your grandmother.
Yeah.
Now, inflation is the reason that the Fed is continuing to raise interest rates is because inflation is still a big issue in the United States, and it's a bigger issue in a lot of other economies as well. It is being felt everywhere, and you don't need to be a sort of seasoned market watcher to know that people are talking about inflation a lot. Now, what the Fed is trying to do is negotiate what it calls a soft landing. It's trying to tame inflation by raising interest rates, but at the same time, it doesn't want to tank the economy. It ideally doesn't want to push the US economy into recession, because obviously recessions are bad.
Unless you change the definition of them.
Unless exactly, which we're gonna touch on in just a moment. Yeah, it's So, because obviously when interest rates go up, the cost of borrowing increases, and this is felt throughout the whole economy. And the reason why markets tend to react badly to hikes in interest rates is because basically everyone is in debt. So the first thing you do when the interest payments on your debt go up, investors quite often sell off assets in order to get some cash on hand to pay down those debts, because they don't want their debts to get out of control. And this, unfortunately, is the kind of debt-based economy that we have to that we live with today. That is just the way it goes. Now, other central banks across the world are also responding to inflation by raising interest rates, but actually, certainly here in the UK and in Europe as well, not really fast enough, I don't think. I mean, the European Central Bank, it raised rates recently. It made a 50 basis point raise, which brought the inflation rate, the interest rate in the Eurozone to zero. It actually had negative interest rates up until that point. Now, the reason I think the ECB is kind of holding back on raising rates is because basically a lot of European countries are very badly in debt, especially in southern Europe, Spain, Italy, Greece, and there's a real fear that if the ECB
default on it, and
it could have massive repercussions, and this is the way that the EU. This is one of the weaknesses, I guess, of the EU, in that there is this disparity between various EU economies. So basically, although interest rates are going up, the recent rises have been in line with expectations recently, and there's also quite a lot of speculation that concerns around housing markets could mean that central banks start to ease off these rate rises, because if the cost of borrowing increases,
And you can't pay your mortgage. Is that?
yeah, and it also means that fewer people take out mortgages because housing becomes unaffordable. No one can afford, to take out a mortgage and make those higher repayments. So there's a genuine concern, especially in places like the US, the Eurozone, and especially actually China as well, that if interest rates go up too high, then the housing markets there could tank. And that is something that governments really want to avoid. So there is this kind of speculation that these rate rises that we're seeing, they could slow down in the not too distant future because of concerns around housing markets and other issues as well, which we'll explore in a little bit. So that's Fed policy. Really, it's been kind of in line with expectations recently, and that's why we've seen a bit of a pump in the markets in general, a bit of kind of better sentiment, if you like. Now, we've touched on the R word as well, recession fears.
Okay.
As I was saying, last week on the 27th, the Federal Reserve announced its interest rate rise. The following day, on the 28th, the US GDP figures for the second quarter of this year came out. It was 2 days of hot stat action. It was
Look at those hot, sexy stats.
It was quite something.
Okay.
It was almost too exciting, Mikey. It really was. Now, these GDP figures came out, and they showed that in the US there had been a second consecutive quarter of negative economic growth,
Which traditionally is called a recession.
Yeah, technically,
Technically.
that is a recession. The kind of received the understood definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic
But
growth.
apparently no.
Yeah. Now this is everyone's talking about this at the moment because this is a really big deal. Now I should start by pointing out that the official a recession is officially decided in the US by a body of 8 people. So this is just these GDP figures just point to a technical recession. An official recession has to be announced, and these people sit. They're part of the National Bureau of Economic Research. They're 8 economists, and they sit on something called the Business Cycle Dating Committee, which
It was like a Tinder.
yeah, a Tinder for geeks. It's I must say it's this is a very sort of not an awful lot is known about this about this
Is it
board.
quite clandestine?
I think so. Yeah, it's
What it says, there is no thorium. They chant and then ding.
yeah.
3 plumes of smoke go up. It's the recession.
So these guys, it's their job to meet, and they decide, and they obviously look at a lot of data, and then at some point declare that this is a recession or not. And they haven't yet done that. And President
Is that because they're just busy?
Yeah, they're all
Just busy.
They're all on holiday.
Yeah.
I should actually point out. I say they're all on holiday. I mean, actually, the Federal Reserve governors have now all gone off on holiday until September, and this is actually basically 2 months. Not 2 months. No, a whole month. Because I think till mid-September.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
6 weeks.
Yeah. They get a decent chunk
solid,
of holiday.
yeah.
So the Federal Reserve, they've now gone off on holiday, and that means no more rate rises until September. And this is another reason why the markets
I'll be gone till September. I'll be gone.
exactly, which the markets are absolutely delighted about. So that was another reason why we saw a bit of a
They've
pump
just put that
last
out
week.
of office.
Yeah, they are now.
Sorry, recession.
Thank you for your inquiry as to whether we are in a recession. I'm currently out of office on the beach until September. Yeah.
Talk about burying your head in the sand.
Absolutely. I'm quite literally burying their head in the sand. Yeah. So going back to the recession, so the Biden administration, President Biden actually came out and said this doesn't sound like a recession on the release of those GDP figures. And
Oh, good.
yeah, so that's okay.
That's fine then.
Now, the Biden administration, this is becoming a very political issue because the Biden administration obviously has a lot of skin in the game here because we've got the midterm elections coming up in the US in November. And the current administration, which is forecast to take a beating one way or another. But obviously, the last thing it kind of wants is to be
Guess
officially
what?
in a
The
recession.
economy's tanked.
Yeah, so I think there's certainly a lot of desire within the administration to sort of hold off on this recession definition for as long as humanly possible, ideally until after the midterms. So
Which are?
November. Okay. Yeah. So a big, we've got this big sort of political milestone coming up in the US. So obviously that is informing whether or not we get this decision. It has become a political process. And I should also point out that this business cycle dating committee, part of the NBER, it does actually have a habit of calling a recession after the fact. And I think the reason for this is, they've got, as you kind of pointed out, they've got a lot of data to look at. It's not a simple question of, they're not flipping a coin or anything. This is a pretty involved process. So, we could actually be already, the US could already be in a recession. It just hasn't,
Doesn't sound like it though.
Yeah. Well,
what does a recession sound like?
Dong. Yeah. What sort of pitch is a recession at? So yeah, I mean, we could well be in a recession, but it just hasn't been declared yet.
Yeah.
So there's these sort of factors to take into account. And I think, as you've kind of hinted at as well, if we are in a recession, if the US is in a recession, it's a kind of weird recession. Because usually a recession means obviously negative growth, but it also means job losses as well. And we've seen this play out time and time again. I remember my dad losing his job during a recession back in the 90s, I think it was. And it was a very sort of, everyone feels it. You have job losses, people have less money in their pockets. You really feel everything sort of slowing down. However, over in the US, this is not the case, because
people are still employed.
Yeah, the job market there is weird. I mean, it's tempting to say the job market is really strong.
But is that the gig economy now, or?
Well, there are a few factors impacting. I mean, firstly, it's worth pointing out that the job market in the US, there are apparently 2 jobs for every applicant. There's a huge amount of vacancies still. And at the last count, the US added sort of 400,000 new jobs. I think it was in the last quarter or so. So that is still growing.
Some of them like listening out for a recession.
Yeah. They added 8 people in particular.
Yeah.
Got a job at the business
Recession
cycle dating
lookout.
committee. Yeah, just stood on top of watchtowers, just trying to see it.
Is that it?
Yeah. Is that it? Is that it over there?
No.
No. That's a seagull. So yes, and also we got things like consumer spending in the US for June was up, which is not the sort of thing you expect to see in a recession.
Oh, so maybe there is some validity to Biden saying it doesn't sound like a recession.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously got plenty of reasons to want to say that, but I think it is backed up by statistics to an extent. Consumer spending is up, and the job market is still strong. Now, as you say, there are a few reasons why. I mean, this job situation in the US is unprecedented as well, and this is largely because of COVID, I think, because there was this great resignation, and this wasn't unique to the US, but I think the US has felt it in particular. Loads of people, for instance, took early retirement. So, they had a lot of people leaving the workforce. They haven't been replaced, but also a lot of it is unexplained. A lot of people appear to have dropped out. They still have several years of working in front of them, but they don't seem to have returned to the economy. And everyone's kind of trying to figure out why this is. And I think there are a few sort of reasons. Obviously, you've got. I think some people probably, the gig economy perhaps has kind of hoovered up a lot of people. There are probably a lot of people in sort of much less official employment. Maybe doing lots of side hustles here and there. I think also as well.
Basically, a lot of people are now influencers as well.
Yeah. Basically, the influencer sector has mushroomed like a fungus. Like bacteria, we multiply very, very quickly as influencers. I think as well, we're seeing it here in the UK. We've got sort of travel chaos at the moment, and airports in particular have been really badly hit because loads of companies, loads of airlines, and also airports themselves. When the pandemic hit, they let people go. They said, right, sorry, no one's flying, so you ain't got a job. And
people have found other jobs, and
so a lot of people have kind of moved into other jobs and stuff. But I think as well, there's probably a sense of a lot of people going, right, so I had this job, and obviously things went bad, and I was let go like that. I was dispensable, and I think I think there must be a real genuine sense of a lot of people here, going, okay, why should I return to an industry now that needs me?
That dropped me so quickly.
That dropped me like a hot potato when the going got tough.
Like an ex-girlfriend who keeps dumping you.
Yeah.
And you're just like, why am I returning to this woman?
And then you go back anyway.
Yeah.
No, so I think there's that. There's the US job market and job markets elsewhere, I think, are in a very weird state at the moment, in this weird sort of post-COVID state. So what this means is, the circumstances of this supposed recession are weird. They're not conforming to what our idea of a recession is, and this is leading many people, and obviously those in the administration, in the U.S. administration, to say, no, this isn't a recession. This is something different. Now, the weird thing was, again, now a lot of people, when these GDP figures were due, a lot of us were saying, well, they're probably going to show a recession. This is, on a technical term, we're going to have a second negative quarter of US GDP growth. This is bad news. So the markets will react accordingly. The markets will tank on that news. Weirdly, they didn't. They actually went up.
Factored it in? Yeah,
I think markets certainly price in bad news ahead of time. You can, any sort of seasoned market participant can see these things on the horizon. They'll have these days circled on their calendar in red. So I think you're right in that sense. That would have been, most people were expecting that, so that would have been priced in. But also, it kind of ties into inflation as well, because many believe that if the US is in recession, then this will force the Federal Reserve, when they come back from their holiday in September, this will force them to ease off on raising interest rates. So there's an expectation that either rate rises will slow. I mean, some people seem to think that they might stop. I don't think that's likely at all. I think interest rates are likely to keep going up, probably for at least the rest of this year, because inflation just isn't going away. And really the only way you can tackle inflation is with raising interest rates. A lot of people are also speculating that inflation might have already peaked, certainly in the US. And actually Elon Musk put out a tweet to this effect, I think, last week, suggesting that maybe we've kind of seen the top. And if inflation is shown to have peaked, then again, that means that rate rises will, at best, ease off.
Yeah.
So again, we had this kind of rally in the markets on this, these negative figures, which under different circumstances you'd think would actually have tanked them. So again, it's just this very, very weird situation that we've got around, are we in recession? Are we not in a recession? Now, this is in the US, but the picture is much grimmer elsewhere, and especially in Europe as well, because the factors that are driving inflation across the world are being felt a lot more in Europe. Things like high energy prices, high fuel prices, rising food prices, things like that. The price of everything is going up, and we're feeling that here in the UK. Everyone's feeling it everywhere. And these just aren't going to go away. And especially in Europe, we've got the threat. I mean, the war in Ukraine is continuing. We've also got, Putin sort of, his hand is kind of hovering over the gas taps. And there was this thing just recently, just a few days ago, the Nord Stream pipeline was shut down for sort of routine maintenance. And there was a lot of concern that the Russians just wouldn't open it up again. And everyone was sort of holding their breath. And then they did turn it on again, but it's running at a reduced capacity. And what this means is that Europe isn't able to kind of stock up on gas reserves ahead of the winter. So we've got this kind of situation where Putin is very much, using Russian gas as a kind of weapon, as leverage in this situation in Ukraine. So this is really weighing on European markets, but these effects ripple out. So this will be having an effect, on the even places like the US, which is much more energy independent than Europe is. So, and it's also worth pointing out as well that although things like consumer spending in the US is up, consumer confidence is actually down, and industrial production is down as well. So, and I think long term these are going to have an effect, because the effect of the rising interest rates, the temptation is to think, oh, well, they've risen, their interest rates have gone up, so the market hasn't tanked, so everything's fine. Actually, interest rate rises take time. All of this stuff kind of takes time to work its way through the economy. So the effects of Fed policy today, they won't be felt until, weeks, maybe even months down the line. So it's important to realize that everything is kind of moving very, very slowly. So it feels like we're sort of sliding down this, this rather slippery slope. And as people's bills go up, and again, I'm talking in sort of global terms here, not just in the US, but as people's bills go up, as energy gets more expensive, as food gets more expensive, people are going to have to cut back on what's called discretionary spending. So, anything, treats, things like clothes or going out or, any of this sort of stuff. Holidays, yeah. Anything that's not sort of really essential is going to be...
your home.
Heating your... Well, yeah, this is... we've talked about this before, hasn't we? I mean, this is a genuine concern for this winter. Like, the spectre of winter this year is really, really, is really, really scary. But as people's bills go up, discretionary spending goes down. So I think we are going to feel the effects of that very soon. And this will mean job cuts. So this will mean hiring freezes as well, So this is the long-term picture, if you like. Although at the moment it doesn't seem so bad, the long-term picture does look quite grim. So we've been talking about sort of global macroeconomic factors, if you like, that have been affecting the markets recently. I want to talk now about some kind of crypto-specific factors, because this is a crypto podcast after all.
Yes.
Why are crypto markets going up? Why have we not seen this massive sell-off? Part of it is of course related to those things we were talking about earlier, recession fears and interest rate rises and GDP, etc., etc. But there are some crypto-specific factors at play here as well. And I think the most important one to mention is in relation to Ethereum. Now, we've talked about the transition of Ethereum from this energy-hungry proof of work network to proof of stake. And this transition over to proof of stake is called the merge. And the merge has been delayed time and time again. And it's become a bit of a meme in crypto. But at the moment, all the news around the merge is actually good. And it looks like, as I say this, the merge is kind of slated for the 19th of September. Okay, so this is good news. If the merge goes ahead as planned on the 19th of September without any issues, that will pump the crypto market. Ethereum specifically, but it will pull the whole crypto market up with it. So a lot of people are anticipating this good news in a little over a month's time. Now, before the actual merge takes place on the Ethereum mainnet, it has to go through 2 other testnet merges. And it's already gone through loads of merges on various Ethereum testnets. But the final 2 are now on the horizon. And in fact, the first one, called Prater, is scheduled to go ahead in, a couple of days from when we record this. So actually, as this comes out, it should have hopefully gone ahead the day before, basically the 4th of August. Is when that is scheduled to go ahead. And then there's another one called Goerli. Goerli. Spelled Goerli. The Goerli, or Goerli, I don't know how you pronounce it. That is scheduled for some time between the 6th and the 12th of August. So, if these go ahead as planned, that means the merge itself is still very much on for the 19th of September. And this kind of good news, this anticipation has really been propping up the crypto market of late. We've seen a big rally in the price of Ethereum, in the price of ETH, but also in a lot of other ETH-related tokens as well. So ST-ETH, this staked Ether on Lido Finance, that's pumped as well. The actual Lido token itself has done very well. Weirdly, another one that has done well, and in fact one of the biggest gainers over the past 3 weeks, has been Ethereum Classic. Now, to some, this may seem a bit counterintuitive because Ethereum, you remember...
the split.
Yeah, exactly. Ethereum Classic came about as a result of this hard fork in the wake of in the wake of this sort of catastrophic DAO hack a few years ago that we talked about. And the only way that the Ethereum developers could see to sort of make this good was to split the network. And so the Ethereum Classic was the one that kind of carried on as though this DAO hack had taken place. And Ethereum Classic has kind of chugged along ever since. And has nothing like the sort of development or adoption that Ethereum has, but nevertheless it is still there. Now, the reason why Ethereum Classic has been doing so well is all because of Ethereum's anticipated transition to proof of stake. Because at the moment there are lots of miners basically still using proof of work to mine ETH. The question is, what do they do with their mining machines when Ethereum moves over to proof of stake?
Oh, is it a different type of machine, obviously?
Well, it's
just doing a different...
Yeah, because they, you with proof of stake, all this validation is done by you're staking coins. You're not, you're not expending electricity. You're not needing to go through the mining process. So the question is, what they're going to have all these mining machines. What do they do with them? And what's expected is that a lot of them are going to switch over to mining Ethereum Classic, to mining its ETC coin. So obviously more mining, more hash power committed to the Ethereum Classic network will mean that it's more secure. And a lot of people are anticipating that this could see a lot more development on Ethereum Classic because it's more secure, because there are more miners participating on its network.
So that guy who's got all that ETH is sitting on gold now.
Oh, the DAO hack guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I imagine. Yeah, he could be feeling pretty good about it. I can't remember what happened though. I think he might have. I don't know. He might have been forced to sell it. Anyhow, it's good news for him. You would imagine. So this is good news, and this has been helping to sort of drive the crypto market as a whole. It's sort of sentiment has gotten better since the sort of disasters of Terra and more recently kind of Celsius and Voyager and things like that, which actually neatly leads me on to this issue of these kind of bankrupt lending and borrowing and trading platforms. So we're starting to see some sort of progress with those, with the likes of Celsius and Voyager and things like that. Celsius has now officially filed for bankruptcy. And I think you could argue that this kind of, again, this is this issue of sort of certainty, of clarity. And I think once the uncertainty around Celsius was kind of removed in that sense, will they file for bankruptcy? Will they try and dig themselves out of the hole? What's going to happen? I think that clarity has also sort of helped to boost markets a little bit.
Yeah.
Although it sounds a little counterintuitive because, I mean...
Something going down and under is not good.
Yeah.
But at least, okay, cool. We can just chalk that off and, okay, cool. It's not... And I suppose it's whether that is going to have another ripple effect on something else. Yeah.
What happens now with the likes of Celsius. Voyager is also filed for bankruptcy too. Now, it's been interesting kind of looking at what's been happening with Celsius in particular recently. Some sort of former employees have been speaking to sort of various media outlets. And and Celsius itself has now started its bankruptcy hearing. So it's.
Are we going to buy the yacht?
Well, that's 3 Arrows Capital.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about them in a moment, actually, because there's been some developments on that front as well. It sounds like, from what Celsius employees have been saying, and from what the company has sort of been saying at its first bankruptcy hearing, it looks like not so much a case of criminal wrongdoing, but just utter incompetence, negligent. Yeah, bad practices. Bad risk management. The company just wasn't being run well. They were chasing these high yields for its customers, and that appears to be the situation
more often than coming up roses.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously the market going down, obviously this is related back to terror and things like this. The market moved against it. The tide went out and they were swimming naked. To paraphrase Warren Buffett. So what happens now is this protracted bankruptcy process gets underway, and with the ultimate aim of kind of making Celsius users whole again. Now, this will take a long time. This could take. We did a video on it recently. We reckon it could take between sort of 2 and 4 years. For that is for all Celsius users to get their funds back. And as I've said before, the people who had a lot of money, the big whales on Celsius, they will get their money back first, and then the little guys will just have to kind of wait in line. However, at least this process is in train. That is something. And I think there's also a sense across the crypto markets that in the wake of these collapses, a lot of leverage has gotten flushed out of the system. A lot of forced selling, that these companies and others have been obliged to do. That seems, and I say this with a touch wood, that seems to be coming to an end now. There doesn't seem to be quite so much forced selling going on. So a lot of people are kind of hopeful that, I guess, the worst is over in that respect, and this could be having, this could be being felt in the markets as well. And yeah, in relation to what you were saying about Three Arrows Capital, this disgraced hedge fund, that is in the process of being liquidated as well. Now, there is concern that obviously its assets will have to be sold off in order to make good, investors and things like that. This could exert some sell pressure down the line. So, we're not in the clear yet by any sense. What was interesting was the founders of Three Arrows Capital, Kyle Davis and Zhu Su, they gave an interview to Bloomberg recently. They kind of surfaced, if you like. They've basically been in hiding for the past few weeks, and they kind of surfaced to give this interview to Bloomberg, which didn't go down well.
Is it sort of on par with
Prince Andrew?
Yeah.
It's that it left that same sort of bad smell. It's that sort of thing.
Were they in a Pizza Express?
they didn't claim to have been in a Pizza Express and working at the time. It was very sort of there was a sense that they were sort of trying to put the blame elsewhere, and they said some silly things. Like one of the guys was like, "Well, everyone thinks we were living it up. I mean, I only own 2 houses in Singapore." It's like, only 2, you poor thing. And
it's like 2 Jags.
Yeah, it's like, I've only got 2 Jaguars. As you pointed out, they'd got this yacht as well. And obviously the yacht was brought into the quote here. I'll read it out. The yacht apparently was, quote, bought over a year ago and commissioned to be built and used in Europe. That was your end quote. That was their sort of explanation of it. It's like, oh, so that's all right then.
Yeah.
It was bought over a year ago.
That's yesterday's news.
Yeah.
Hey, come on.
Forget the yacht. Look,
I've only got 1 yacht.
It's like,
and it's for Europe. They need cheering up. Come on,
dude. The yacht is not the issue here. It was very.
I'm bored of that yacht. I'm part of the board yacht club.
Just look past the yacht, people, please. Can we stop talking about the yacht? Yeah. So there was. Those guys saw surface. I don't think that had any particular effect on the market. But
where can I watch that Bloomberg interview on Bloomberg?
It's not a videotaped interview. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. People can have a look at it.
Is it because if it was, it would just be memed beyond.
Yeah, and I think probably for that reason, they probably turned down any requests to film it as well. And yeah, I mean,
what's his Twitter been like?
Very quiet. Like Do Kwon, the terror guy, very, very quiet. Yeah. A lot of people have gone very quiet.
Radio silence.
Yeah, real radio silence. And I mean, it's understandable.
I'm sure they've got other things to be doing.
Yeah, you'd think so. Voyager as well. I mean, this was just crazy. So Voyager has been is obviously in the bankruptcy process as well, but Voyager had also claimed on its website that it was FDIC covered, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Now we have an equivalent here in the UK. It's
with
called
the 85 grand.
Yeah, exactly. Here in the UK, it's called the FSCS, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. Basically, your deposits are covered up to a certain amount. And Voyager was claiming on its website that it was FDIC insured. So people were looking at it and go, oh, well, it must be legit, because even if it does go under, it's covered. My deposits are covered. This was not true. It's basically Voyager's bank. The bank that Voyager used was FDIC protected. Voyager itself wasn't. And Voyager has now been instructed in no uncertain terms to remove that from its website. So
I'm sure that will make everyone feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Take that off. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's criminal.
Well,
I suppose they're going to be sued, but what are they going to sue them for?
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah. It's there's so much more to come out over this story and stuff, but it just looks like
It's
mismanagement.
a clusterfuck.
Yeah, I think that's the technical term. Anyhow, so that's kind of crypto-related factors. I'm not too sure whether what's been going on with Celsius and Voyager and all the rest of it. I'm not sure whether that's impacted too much on the markets. But as I say, I think certainly that kind of resolution in the case of Celsius, I think that did has brought a little bit of clarity to things. I just want to touch briefly on a couple of other sort of crypto-specific things, or things that I think are moving the crypto markets in particular. We saw some fairly decent, some good news and bad news from the tech sector last week. Now, crypto is very much correlated to tech stocks, particularly those on the NASDAQ at the moment. And we had some earnings reports from last week. Now, Apple and Amazon both surpassed expectations. Apple did really quite well, and it's now back to number one company by market cap, which is just crazy. And I mean, it's interesting because
that's what something is. They're quite luxury items, really, aren't they?
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd imagine so.
And also, just with the supply chain that is just obvious, I thought was decimated. I would have thought they would have struggled to be making things.
Yeah,
or did they Did they predict that and sort of?
I'm not sure. I think probably. I mean, Apple was certainly impacted by supply chain issues, especially as a lot of its products are put together in China. I think probably the reason why it surpassed expectations in earnings.
Because the expectations were low.
The expectations, yeah, I think were pretty low. I think, the supply chains are starting to sort of grind back up.
We've got wheat finally coming out of the Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah, so it looks like, I mean, we're not out of the woods in any sense yet, and if we get if we get more COVID lockdowns in China or elsewhere, that could be a real disruptive factor. So, but it does look like they're starting to sort of grind back into life again. So that could be one of the reasons why Apple is looking better. Google was slightly below expectations, but not too bad. It was so Google's or Alphabet, Google's parent company, that was okay. Microsoft and Meta, formerly Facebook, didn't do too well though. So we had a kind of mixed bag on the tech sector, on the tech earnings front. But all in all, if the likes of Apple and Amazon are doing well, I think a lot of people interpreted this as a sign that maybe things weren't quite as bad as some people would lead you to believe. Because as you say, if we are in a recession, if people are tightening their belts, you'd imagine that would hit. People would buy. People would put off buying that iPhone, or they wouldn't be buying their usual levels of crap on Amazon.
I mean, I'm still on. What is this one? I didn't get the last one.
How frugal of you.
I'm normally such an Apple fanboy that I'll just pump whatever cash I've got into a new iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, but I haven't for the last year.
Wow.
And I'd be thinking about it because the new one doesn't look that great.
Okay. Well.
Anyway, this is now an Apple podcast.
Watch Apple's share price nosedive as this comes out. Oh my word! Mike didn't buy a new iPhone. Yeah, so a bit of a mixed bag from tech. But yeah, I think some people can interpret those decent earnings from Apple and Amazon as maybe a sign that things aren't so bad. So that could have had an effect on the market. I think, like I said earlier on in the episode, I think we're still, that bad news is going to make itself felt later on. So that's worth being aware of. Another crypto-specific factor, now this is related to Coinbase, but this is not unique to Coinbase. Basically, Coinbase is having a rough time, not as rough as some crypto companies, obviously. It's under one of its former employees is under investigation for insider trading. ARK Invest, which is a big, a big investor in Coinbase, recently dumped $1.4 million Coinbase shares at a loss. And this is bad news. This is a bad look for the company. It's also had to lay off a lot of people. It's basically, Coinbase hasn't had much good news recently. Now, obviously, Coinbase is one of the most well-known crypto companies out there, so this does have an effect on the rest of the market. But the real concern for Coinbase is that it's being investigated by the SEC. And the SEC recently came out and said that 9 crypto assets that Coinbase had listed on its platform, the SEC considered them to be securities. Now, we've talked about securities a lot before. We know what happens if the SEC thinks someone is selling unregistered securities in the US. It is bad news. So the SEC is sniffing around Coinbase, and it looks like, I think, the SEC seems to kind of have the wind in its sails a little bit at the moment. So I think this is something that's going to weigh on the crypto market in the not too distant future.
And that's why you're thinking till 2024.
That's one of the reasons why I think we're not.
Is this Ripple? Sorry, XRP.
That case is still dragging through the courts.
But I thought there was. I mean, some people are saying it's going to pump. Some people are saying it's not. Some people are saying hey, you know what? They could actually win this. They
could certainly win the case, yeah. Interestingly, the SEC is actually pursuing another case against another much smaller project called Library. And it's alleging that it sold its crypto asset as an unregistered security. And there's a judgment expected on this in the next couple of months, I think. And people are watching this very, very closely because
it may set a precedent.
Yeah. And if it does, if the SEC wins that case, that could be bad news, not just for Ripple, but for the rest of the crypto industry. So the SEC is kind of like is a bit of an unexploded bomb under the crypto market at the moment, and we're going to have to keep a very close eye on what Gary Gensler and his gang are up to, because I think this is something that's going to impact further down the line. Okay. I want to look ahead to what could be coming next for both the wider world and also for crypto. First of all, what could be coming next for the world? Well, I think definitely prepare for more volatility in the markets. As I said earlier, the situation, especially in places like Europe, is not looking good and is, I think, only going to get worse as winter sets in, as the weather gets colder. So I think continued disruption from the war in Ukraine and just a worsening economic situation in Europe as a result of that is something I think that is pretty much nailed on for the next few months. I'd love to see some kind of resolution for that, but it's very hard to see that situation being resolved certainly in the short term. Because of this worsening situation in Europe, I think we're going to see a lot of political upheaval as well. I mean, the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, he's already been sort of forced to resign. We're seeing unrest in the Netherlands. We've seen kind of farmers' protests over. I mean, this is very much related to environmental policies, but I think it's worth looking at it in a wider context as well. I think we're going to see.
There are a lot of theories on this as well, like Sri Lanka. That Rajapaksa family. Rajapaksa family basically screwed the whole country. Insisting that everything, hey, we're just going to be organic. And then when they couldn't grow enough that way, but not even no foresight, then it's kind of like, okay, cool, no one can eat now. No one can afford the land and someone's going to buy it all. I wonder who.
The situation in Sri Lanka is really, really bad. And I think we're going to see a repeat of that in a lot of places. And quite possibly in Europe as well.
Well, yeah, it's happening in the Netherlands.
It's happening in the Netherlands.
Like, you've got to use this fertilizer, or you can't use this fertilizer.
I can't. With
nitrogen in it or something like that, and it's just like, well,
the Dutch farmers were like, well, we can't grow enough food then. And they got in their tractors and made their presence felt. So, and I think this is only going to get more pronounced as things get tougher, as people struggle to heat their homes or afford enough food, and as job cuts bite and as recession makes itself felt. So I think that is something that is in the immediate future for Europe and other parts of the world as well. We've also had the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. I mean, that forecasts that the world is going to head into recession over the coming months, mostly because of inflation. Now, one economy that we haven't really talked about an awful lot, we've talked a lot about the US, we've talked quite a bit about Europe, we haven't really discussed China either. And China. And China has its fair share of problems too, and this is largely related to the property market. We've seen a lot, and it's difficult to get a clear sense of what's going on in China because they are
suppression.
Yeah, they've very much got a sort of suppression vibe going on, and I've speculated in YouTube videos before that China tends to sort of massage its GDP figures up. So it's very difficult to get a clear sense of what exactly is going on in the Chinese economy because they don't want us to know. But there's certainly signs that the housing market there, which is massive, it makes up an enormous proportion of the Chinese economy. And property has for a long time been the sort of number one investment for people in China. That market is showing serious signs of stress. And we saw this last year with the with concerns around Evergrande, which is this huge kind of property developer, and it kind of branched off into other things as well. But there were lots of concerns last year that it was going to default on its debts, and it's still in a pretty precarious position. And we've seen actual sort of kickbacks from Chinese citizens as well. A lot of property developers haven't been able to finish building these properties that a lot of investors have bought. Sort of, they buy them off plan. They bought them before they were built, and a lot of people have stopped paying their mortgages in protest because they've gone, look, you haven't finished building this apartment, this house, so I'm not going to pay.
Which exacerbates the situation because they don't have the money coming in.
Yeah,
I think that there's a few developments around here that were Chinese owned that are being sold as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
one of them was a big one just over there that they sold at quite a loss.
Really?
Yeah, just to sort of get some cash.
I mean, construction, the property and construction is massive business, and of course, these things reach across the world, and obviously very, very precarious as well. I mean, there's insane profits to be made, but construction and property is very, very vulnerable to outside economic.
So, what is
forces.
causing is it a stress in that the bubble is going to burst, or is it again supply chain issues, or is it?
It's a lot, yeah. It's a sort of combination of factors, really. But I think that certainly supply chain issues and COVID lockdowns have kind of hurt the property sector. They've slowed down development. Lots of workers have been locked down, so they've been unable to finish a lot of these projects, and that's part of the reason why you've seen these mortgage protests. People not paying.
The costs are still there. They've probably got some ongoing costs, but they haven't been developing, not finishing on time, and it's
Yeah, and we've also had, there've been concerns around bank deposits in parts of China as well. And
there was this. They rolled out some tanks.
Yeah, they had.
I mean, it was obviously just a tank exercise.
Obviously,
not anything.
The tanks just happened to be conducting an exercise in the area at the time. Yeah, so there were these bank runs on sort of regional banks in China. People were worried that that their savings were at risk.
Do they not have the thing that?
FCIC thing. I mean, they could do. It's but all it takes is a bit of is a lack of confidence, and these protests. You don't really protest in public in China and expect to get away with it. So the Chinese economy is looking like every other economy is looking precarious.
Shaky.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I did do a video over on our main channel about these kind of Chinese bank runs and also Chinese GDP a few weeks ago as well. So if you want to kind of dig more into that, then I urge people to have a look at that. However, also on the topic of China, we've got Taiwan.
Have they been emboldened by the Ukraine situation and their?
There's a lot of speculation,
circling.
Yeah, Taiwan is kind of in the news at the moment. obviously, it's been a potential flashpoint for a long, long time. And yeah, there was a lot of concern that China could use, China could do a Russia, basically, and go, right, we're going in. And Biden and President Xi, I think they've exchanged words over Taiwan. There's a lot of kind of posturing going on over Taiwan. That situation could
just what we need.
Absolutely. Like, yeah. It really is the blackest of black swans, I think, Taiwan. And actually, it's kind of flashpoint as we record this.
Why would China, if they just go, do they need that?
Well, it's a good question.
Do they need sanctions and like if they're already on a precarious situation, or do they see this as we're more battle ready than the West?
Well, I mean, yeah, it could be. On the one hand, it's such a difficult situation to call, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you could go, China's suffering economically at the moment. Really, the last thing it needs is to get dragged into a costly war. Because I mean, Taiwan is an island. It's not the easiest thing to invade, even if you have got the largest army in the world. So it would be expensive, even just to do it. But I mean, to say nothing of the potential consequences from the rest of the world. So there's that on the one hand, but there's also the sense, I mean, China has coveted Taiwan for decades, and it could be thinking, look, if there's a time to do it, it's now. The US is attracted. And of course, we were saying this, I think lots of people were saying this in February, just before Russia rolled into Ukraine. The question was like, why would Russia do this? Putin must know that there will be some sort of response, almost certainly in the form of sanctions, possibly a military response as well, which obviously didn't materialize. But yeah, I mean, I remember waking up on, was it the 24th of February or something, when Russia went in? You just thought, and I think I was saying to you in a podcast episode, it's like, this really is the last thing the world needs right now. Yeah. And hey, they went ahead and did it anyway. It's a very precarious situation. And I mean, at the moment, as we record this, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the US House of Representatives, is due to make a visit to Taiwan, to Taipei, the capital, today. And this is being seen as very, very provocative by the Chinese. The Chinese are not happy. And it is a big potential flashpoint, and the effects of that would be huge. Yeah. Even if it didn't come to a military confrontation, which would obviously be what China would gamble on, rather like Putin did, it would still be really bad news for the global economy. More sanctions, more disruption. And it's interesting because Taiwan produces more than 60%
of the chips.
Yeah, of all the semiconductor chips in the world. So an invasion of Taiwan by China would be terrible news for
Apple.
Yeah, for Apple, for the global electronics industry. Yeah, and that would be, you would really feel that. So that would really tank, the wider economy. And it's interesting because just last week the US that they passed a $280 billion bill to boost the US's native semiconductor industry, which says to me
they see something on the horizon.
Well, I think they
just want to protect.
They're mitigating against that possibility. So
they've got their own fuel, their own semiconductors. They're fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, the US is we talk about
one of the least susceptible countries on the planet, geographically and economically.
It's a very good point to make, actually, because, as I say, we've referenced the US economy a lot, and I talk about it all the time on the channel because it is important. But you're absolutely right. The US is much more insulated from these global forces than other countries are, and Europe is the good. I mean, just geographically, this war is happening. This war in Ukraine is happening on Europe's doorstep. So yeah, I mean, if things seem bad for the future of the US economy, then spare a thought for other economies as well. And of course, the US, and we've talked about Europe and we've talked about China. I mean, these are advanced economies. So the effect on less advanced economies, Sri Lanka's, for instance, can be catastrophic.
Yeah,
and I think
starvation.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about higher.
Oh no, we're going
to
have to heat our homes, and which is important, and people do lose their lives, because they can't afford to. It's the choice of eating or heating.
Yeah. But then we're also talking about people might not be able to afford a new iPhone, stuff like that. In parts of Africa and Asia and South America, people could starve.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a million times worse.
There's horrible stories of people selling their children just to.
Jeez, I mean, and I think it's really important to point that out. We're looking at it from a very sort of coddled, developed world perspective. The consequences of everything that we've talked about could be so much worse, so much more nightmarish for people in less advanced economies. So, it's important to point that out. We feel effects and that are nothing compared to what other people are going to have to endure. So, so. This is
another fun podcast.
Yeah, more joy. And I just want, before we talk about what could be next for crypto, very quickly before we go, I think this is something I've been thinking about as well. Over the last.
Before we go in there. So with that technological, the semiconductor thing, that is obviously a massive deal for crypto as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously crypto is run on computers.
Yeah, there is that. It's also, I think, it probably the more immediate effect would be the fact that the tech industry, the wider tech industry,
and people often see Bitcoin as a tech stock almost.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Bitcoin and crypto in general is very much tied to tech stocks as well. So tech stocks go up, crypto goes up, and the opposite, and vice versa as well. So. Yeah, I think the effects of a massive drop in semiconductor supply, which we did see actually, we did have that over the pandemic, and actually, crypto held up. Crypto obviously flourished in the pandemic and stuff, but I think, it's certainly that would be felt across all sectors. Crypto wouldn't be immune from the fallout of that. Now, I think it's really tempting as well to think. I certainly thought over the last couple of years, really, it's like you always kind of look ahead. It's like, well, hopefully in a few years' time things will be better. COVID won't be a problem anymore. We'll have got inflation under control. Supply chains will be back up and running. And, all these problems that we're dealing with at the moment will hopefully be resolved or, certainly a lot less serious.
Or like there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly.
But,
well, it's this sort of thing. We always look to this future, these kind of sunlit uplands, as they say. But let's face it, more problems are going to come along. And I think Taiwan is a potential. I'm not saying that Taiwan is necessarily going to, be the next global flashpoint. I'm just saying it's potential. It's a worry.
It's a red flag, as they say.
It's a big old red flag, with yellow
stars.
Look, the outlook for the wider global economy is certainly is not great for certainly the next few months and probably years, and that's something that people should take into account when making. Well, I mean, any sort of decisions really, but especially if you're into crypto and you're thinking of investing, this is these
only
are
invest what you can afford to lose.
Absolutely, but you need to pay attention to the bigger picture. Now, just to touch on what could be next for crypto before we sign off. Now, there is good news because even though we're in a bear market, development is still going ahead.
Projects are happening.
Yeah, good projects are still, people, some crypto companies are still hiring, they're still building. And regardless of the wider economic situation, those good projects will continue to develop. And this is one of the upsides to a bear market, if you like. The good projects keep going and there are, opportunities out there to invest in these things cheaper than you might have done at the height of the bull market. Now, I think prices are unlikely to recover to levels that we saw in November last year, when we had those all-time highs. Yeah. So the bear market is going to continue. And as I say, I think that could be until 2024 at the least. So bear that in mind. There's also this headache ahead like the SEC that I talked about. That seems to be coming for crypto with sort of renewed vigor at the moment. It's trying to, essentially classify most cryptocurrencies as securities if it can. Very few cryptos are exempt in the SEC's eyes.
Bitcoin would be because it's so diverse.
Bitcoin will be okay in that respect.
Ethereum?
Ethereum probably as well. not least because an SEC official in the past has said that Ethereum was sufficiently decentralized, and that was several years ago. So I would imagine that BTC and ETH would be safe from the SEC in that respect. But the wider crypto industry is very much threatened by the SEC.
Would that have a knock-on effect to the tokens built off ETH?
Yeah, quite possibly, because some of those could be classified as securities. So yeah, there's certainly worry around, because the SEC as well seems to be determined to legislate by force rather than actually go and clarify things and make things, make it so as these crypto companies can get in line. It just seems to be going after, this company, that company, label this a security, that not a security. There's so little clarity.
I don't like labels. We don't like labels.
Yeah, it's like, this is a security, this is not a security. Yeah. This, I don't know what this is. So it's tough because, these companies, they want to get into line. They don't want to be on the wrong side of the law necessarily. But the SEC and others make it so difficult. There's so little clarity. So on that note, we are going to see more regulation of the crypto industry across the world. Again, it's very much focused on the US, but the EU is taking steps towards regulating crypto. We're seeing stuff here in the UK as well. All across the world. India is not proving very pro-crypto at the moment. So we are going to see more crypto regulation. Now, this could be a good thing if it's done right. If it's done with a recognition that of what a powerful technology crypto and blockchain offer, the opportunities. If it allows crypto to flourish within a regulatory framework, that's good.
Protecting investors,
yeah. If
it curtails innovation,
exactly, it will be bad, and that will be something that the crypto market will have to deal with. So that's a potential. There are potential benefits and also drawbacks to this potential regulation. So really, the only thing I think we can almost certainly be sure of for crypto in the short to medium term is more volatility. So although we will see more rallies ahead, it's not going to be strictly down from here. But I think we're going to see a lot of these kind of rallies, pumps on good news and all that sort of stuff. But then, those are going to tail off as well. And I think actually, if we look at prices today, they are
down a bit.
Yeah, they're down. There's a correction. There's a correction going on. So people should be really, really wary. And I've said this. I say this till I'm blue in the face. But just because the markets are going up, just because they're pumping, it doesn't mean that everything is good and rosy again. These are very, very difficult conditions to try and trade in. So you really need to have a long-term focus, and you have to be prepared that if you are going to invest at this sort of time, you have to be prepared for the value of that investment to go down, certainly in the short term. You have to invest with an eye on the longer term. If in doubt,
basically, Guy's advice is
not financial advice. Exactly. Okay, so that's just an overview of basically kind of what's going on. A few things to bear in mind if you're interested in crypto, if you're a crypto investor,
or living in Taiwan,
or if you live in Taiwan. Yeah.
I was made in Taiwan.
You
apparently.
were? Really?
That's what my dad told me. They were on a round the world trip honeymoon, and
the twinkle.
Well, 9 months pre my birthday, they were
okay.
In Taiwan.
In Taiwan. Let's leave it there. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.